Hello everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and welcome to the breaking news. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon, link in the description below. Today we have breaking news coming from around the world, as we've been able to hear inside of the Republic of Poland that a Russian Shahed 136 Kamikaze drone flew 68 miles into Polish territory last night and exploded directly along the village of Osina, damaging 3 buildings but not causing any fatalities or casualties. We have been able to hear that the Polish government is investigating the incident as a possible act of terror, as we are seeing that Polish investigators have finally arrived at the scene and are of course conducting a full-scale investigation of the incident and also speaking to the Polish public at large about the developing situation and information coming about from the explosion. We have also been able to hear at the same time that the Russian Federation appears to be completely backing out on negotiation attempts with the state of Ukraine, or more so a Zelensky-Putin peace meeting, as we have been able to hear that it appears that they are stating that they may increase the rank of the diplomats or rank of the Russian officials present representing Russian interests in a peace talk with Zelensky, but did not suggest or even denote that Putin would be involved in these peace talks at any point in the future, already showing us that the Russians are backing off the promise that Putin would be present in future peace talks and continuing to insult the Ukrainian position in the conflict by treating the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, like a minor figure that instead of being worthy of the attention of the leader of the nation that they are at war at, they are continuing to choose minor members of the government to be able to represent the Russian Federation's interests, showing that on a diplomatic level, they do not consider the president of Ukraine to be important enough to even warrant the attention of the president of the Russian Federation. At the exact same time, while the Russian Federation is showing that they don't believe that the Ukrainians deserve that sort of attention, it appears that the Ukrainians are giving the Russians all the attention that they need, and then some, around the area of the Kucheriv Yar pocket. As of today, officially, Ukrainian armed forces have been able to retake the Kucheriv Yar pocket area and have pushed the Russian Federation into a small valley near to the area east of Kucheriv Yar, where the remainder of the lost battalion of the 132nd Motorized Rifle Brigade, formerly the 3rd Berkut, is currently trying to make a holdout at this moment as the 93rd Brigade continues to press forward their offensives and also attempt to completely destroy and shatter the remnants of the lost battalion. We have also been able to hear of other major developments inside the Middle East, as we have been able to hear that the Islamic Republic of Iran, currently gripped by crippling economic situations and a water shortage, now also a natural gas shortage, has once again suffered another significant fire, this time near to the area of the Tabriz airport. We have also been able to hear simultaneously that an unreported explosion occurred inside of As-Sawaida, with the exact origins of it being unknown. It is highly possible, however, that this explosion may be a continuation of Syrian interim government and Druze hostilities, which have been carrying on for months at this point, with genocides being conducted by the Syrian interim government against the Druze people on several occasions prior. We have also been able to hear in other major news from the far east of the Russian Federation that the Russian Federation's fuel shortages are now becoming even more significant and pronounced, finally reaching the territory of the Russian Federation, as the Primorsky Krai Oblast, home to the largest city in the eastern part of the Russian Federation, Vladivostok, is now undergoing a significant fuel shortage, leading civilians to queue hundreds of cars deep in front of gas stations, hoping to get any access to fuel resources if they are available. We have also been able to hear as well that near to the area of the state of Japan, the USS San Antonio, a support vessel of the U.S. Navy, caught on fire, requesting the support of Japanese authorities to help them to extinguish the blaze, and it does appear that, at least at the moment, a serious incident has evolved on board the USS San Antonio. We will be making sure to cover each and every single piece of this news in our short war video, and of course we are going to start off with our most major pieces of news that came out of the Republic of Poland, most importantly just southwest of Lublin. We have been able to hear that around this area there has been a significant explosion of a Russian kamikaze drone that occurred within the area of the small town of Osina. We can actually go directly to the map here and show you all the location of the small village of Osina, and we can also speak greater about the kind of impact that this is having at the moment on Polish national security and also NATO combat readiness, as it does appear from every account that we have that a Russian kamikaze drone has exploded onto the territory of Poland. This is the first such incident that has ever been seen in the conflict, and we also were able to see the explosion itself in this clip right here, which we'll be showing y'all very quickly. You can once again see the town of Osina and the picture of the drone as well, the drone engine and propeller, which appears to have survived the explosion, largely intact, which is fairly normal for a Shahed 136 style drone. And we can also see them showing a picture of a Shahed 136 style drone engine, and here's the security footage. As we can hear, it does sound as though it was a fairly large explosion, typical of that of the warhead of a Shahed 136 style drone, and not only that, this exploded 68 miles inside of Polish territory. We have seen some Russian drones fly into Polish territory, and for that matter, some Russian and Belarusian helicopters also flying into Polish territory. But during those incidents, the penetration of airspace only lasted about 1 or 2 miles, or several kilometers, inside of the Polish border. We have never seen a situation or a development for that matter, where a drone has flown past a major Polish city, like the city of Lublin, and has ended up actually exploding onto the territory of the Republic of Poland. Not only that, we have been able to hear that at the same time, there was a large amount of footage showing the actual situation at the site of the explosion as of today, as Polish authorities have started to swarm the area and conduct a full-scale investigation into the explosion and the causes for such an event. Next, you see a Polish military Mi-24 flying over the area, as Polish investigators begin to wander around the surrounding countryside near to the village, investigating the incident, and also cordoning off the area. We have also been able to hear later on from that there was more information or developments that were going on, at least at that time, as we were able to hear that Polish authorities did state that, at least for the moment, the Republic of Poland was considering the incident to be a full-scale investigation. They have stated that 3 buildings within the small village of Osina were damaged as a result of the explosion. The drone exploded directly along the small length of the village that can be seen right here on the map. The issue, however, is that this drone exploded 68 miles inside of the Republic of Poland's territory. And this has brought up a great deal of questions by the Polish public and the Polish government as to how the drone entered the Polish airspace and penetrated 68 miles deep into Polish territory completely undetected by the Republic of Poland's armed forces. Some have stated that it may have been flying so low that it was undetectable to radar, or most radars would have an incredibly difficult time detecting the drone, while others have stated that it simply made it through as a part of luck. Nevertheless, the situation is incredibly concerning, especially considering that the Russian Federation simultaneously is building up a significant amount of armed forces near to the city of Grodno within northwestern Belarus to prepare for the Zapad 2025 military exercises, which according to the European Parliament could be a prelude to invasion, as this military exercise is far larger in scale than any other prior Zapad military exercise, most exercises consisting of about 30 to 40,000 personnel. This military exercise this year is projected to be around 115,000 strong, and will also be conducting the tests and operations of nuclear weaponry in the resulting actions that will take place in early September as a part of the Zapad 2025 military exercises. Considering the tension surrounding the area at this moment because of the military exercises, and also due to the fact that Russian drones have never at any point penetrated Polish airspace and also had a live warhead on board exploding onto Polish territory, is something that is raising a large amount of alarm bells here in the West, and is possibly showing that this may have been a Russian attempt to send a signal to NATO that they are prepared to take further actions and direct hostile action against the West. I'd also like to make it clear that no drones that flew over Lithuania or Latvia in previous times, either the drone that flew all the way past the Latvian town of Resigne, or the Russian drones that flew over the areas of Vilnius, the capital of Lithuania, were armed with explosives. All types appear to have been some sort of a variant of a training drone that was unarmed with a warhead, generally showing that the Russian Federation may have taken deliberation in that decision to use unarmed drones, but to still cause a great deal of alarm and fear within these countries that the drone, while in flight, may have possibly been armed with a sort of a warhead or explosive similar to the one that was seen in Poland. So far, the Russian Ministry of Defense, or the Foreign Ministry, has not made a comment on the situation that has developed so far in Poland, and we have also been able to hear that no official apology has been given by the Russian Foreign Ministry. Nevertheless, we have been able to hear that the Russian Federation is still moving forward with the concept that the United States and the coalition of the willing in Europe has put forward of potential direct peace talks between the President of Ukraine and the President of the Russian Federation. It appears that the Russian Federation is already backing off of prior claims or promises that President Putin would personally be present with a meeting with Zelensky, most likely somewhere near to Switzerland. Prior yesterday, we were able to hear that the president of the Russian Federation invited Zelensky to Moscow, a move diplomatically that is considered insulting and completely tone deaf, as the two nations are at war. And generally considering the fact that the two nations are at war, it is diplomatically acceptable to hold the meeting in a neutral third-party state, but not within the states of the two direct warring parties. Nevertheless, the Russians went forward with the invitation to Zelensky, and Zelensky, of course, largely refused the invitation, stating that the meeting needs to happen within a neutral third-party nation, not the state of Ukraine. We have now been able to hear that as of today, the foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, aka the Horseface, has stated that they may raise the level of the delegation heads at the negotiation with Ukraine, but will not involve Putin. This is something that is generally insulting, not only on a diplomatic level, but also is largely Putin reneging on his prior promise made to the President of the United States that he himself would be personally present for peace talks with the state of Ukraine. Vladimir Putin has generally treated the Ukrainian government as an illegitimate government, and for this reason, we have seen that if any meetings have been conducted by the Russian Federation with the Ukrainians, they always involve the lowest level officials that could be there. We have actually heard that the last time a peace negotiation was conducted inside of Istanbul in Turkey, which was only several months ago, the Russians' highest level representative was a deputy aide to the president of the Russian Federation. That's the guy who gets Putin a lemonade here and there and also moves his papers around when he needs to. That was the highest level official that was present during the Istanbul meetings in Turkey, which generally was offensive to the Ukrainian side, as not only had they brought out their Minister of Defense, their Minister of Foreign Affairs, and the President of Ukraine, they were then met by one of the lowest officials imaginable from the office of the President of the Russian Federation. It now appears that Lavrov and Putin will most likely be conducting the same thing, but move it up from, instead of it being the deputy aide to the president of the Russian Federation, it may just be the aide to the president of the Russian Federation. Not a significant upgrade, and also due to the complete lack of rank of these delegation heads, absolutely nothing could be achieved within one of those peace talks. A significant diplomat of rank or official of rank of the Russian Federation must be present for any sort of a diplomatic negotiation to move forward, as a significant rank diplomat or official would generally be able to make the kinds of calls, decisions, or generally have the blessings of their leader, the president of the Russian Federation, to be able to try and make any sort of significant diplomatic concessions in the event of any sort of headway being made. The fact that deputy officials are being sent is generally showing us that at this moment, and also that even the notion of this is being made once again, is generally showing us that the Russian Federation doesn't even want anything to happen, even if there was any sort of progress made by these very junior deputy officials that will be sent by the Russian Federation in these upcoming peace talks. For this reason, we can once again see that the Russian negotiating position is insincere, and that they are largely looking for concessions on the front line to be able to help them out with bypassing the Dobropilska defensive line that the Ukrainians have made to the west of Donetsk, and then start a new offensive targeting Kharkiv and the Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhia regions after that cessation of territory would be made. Outside of that development in Moscow, it doesn't appear that the Russian Federation is getting the kind of attention that they would like to get, at least from the Ukrainians, on the front lines, as this moves us directly into the area of the Mir breakthrough, which largely officially has died today. To show y'all really quickly what the front line is currently looking like, we have been able to hear that the Ukrainians just the other day liberated the town of Zelody Kolodias, which was one of the pockets that the Russian Federation had largely found itself trapped inside of, as elements of the 132nd Separate Motorized Rifle Brigade, formerly the 3rd Brigade Berkut of the Donetsk People Republic, was largely encircled and considered to be lost by the 132nd Brigade several days ago. We were able to hear yesterday that the Ukrainian Armed Forces had officially liberated the Zelody Kolodias pocket, and it appeared that the remnants of the battalion had actually retreated in a flying retreat to the area of Kucheriv Yar to be able to meet the remainder of their battalion and to create a last stand there. At this moment, it appears that a breakout attempt by the Russian Federation's armed forces is largely impossible at this moment, as it appears that the Ukrainian Armed Forces and the 1st National Guard Corps, as of, has been able to encircle the area with a significant enough amount of forces that an attempt by the battalion to conduct a breakout to get back to Russian lines would most likely be a death sentence, with most of the battalion being destroyed or taken prisoner within the process of that breakout attempt, meaning that at this point Russian commanders made the decision in the battalion to be able to try and hold their positions and solidify a defensive location until Russian offensive forces of the 132nd could attempt to break through the Ukrainian lines, relieving the lost battalion and then allowing them to be reabsorbed back into Russian front lines, with the Russians then retreating further south and once again maintaining the cohesion of this battalion. It appears that will no longer be the case, as the Fighting 93rd, famous for its involvement in the Kharkiv counteroffensive and other major battles throughout the war in Ukraine, has officially liberated the town of Kucheriv Yar today, according to reports. It appears that the very last remnants, of what we can tell, of the lost battalion have now been pushed into a small valley just south of the village of Hrushke. This is a significant development, as the valley will provide really no actual defensive elements. The structures inside of Kucheriv Yar could have been used to try and conceal the locations of Russian forces, making it unclear which buildings they were inside of, at least until they came under fire or returned fire. But it appears that the valley at Hrushke is going to be the very last stand of this lost battalion of the 132nd Motorized Rifle Brigade. From what we can tell, the Fighting 93rd is now conducting offensives against the small valley area, and from what we can tell, only several companies, which a battalion tactical group usually consists of around 8 or 9 companies of Russian soldiers, are left at this moment conducting the last stand inside of the Hrushke Valley area. This will most likely be resulting in the Russian Federation losing the battalion entirely, either in wounded and killed or surrendered forces, meaning that the 132nd Motorized Rifle Brigade is now down an entire combat battalion. This will start to cause significant issues within the 132nd, as their forces will be taking, based off of these losses, a possible 15% reduction in manpower numbers alone, without any chance of a reinforcement, and the actual battalion itself, technically on an administrative level, also being entirely lost to enemy action. The fact of a significant breakthrough going this poorly is incredibly rare, and not only the fact that the small battalion was already lost as far as the Kucheriv Yar position is even more shocking, as it shows that the 93rd had conducted such an attack with a great deal of veracity that it was actually able to uproot the forces from that battalion from their positions in Kucheriv Yar immediately and push them into the valley. So we are generally seeing that the situation is entirely lost for the forces at Kucheriv Yar, and the chances of them being able to recover the situation, conduct a breakout, or the Russians trying to conduct a counteroffensive to break through and relieve those forces is next to none at this point. The lost battalion will be lost to the pages of history without any attempt at recovery or relief. The Ukrainians are also modifying and improving their abilities at drone warfare simultaneously, as we have been able to see picture and video evidence of the Ukrainians now using heavy FPV drones to provide 155mm artillery shells, direct same-day shipping to the Russian Federation. This is a standard 155mm artillery shell, and from what I can generally tell, this appears to be the M798 variety of high explosive shells, which are generally standard amongst the NATO alliance and especially in the United States within the present day. These drones are able to take standard high explosive shells, which only cost a few $1,000s to produce, and are able to give them the kind of precision guidance abilities similar to that of an M982 Excalibur round, which are a laser guided round that requires for a laser designator to be pointed directly at the target, and also has an advanced computer and telemetry system inside of the shell, and using a series of fins on the rear area of the high explosive shell is allowing the shell to be able to guide itself directly onto its target and explode directly overhead. This completely removes the expensive cost of an M982 Excalibur, which can cost over $100,000, and is largely relegating a precision-guided 155mm artillery shell to just several $1,000s. Ukrainian drones are incredibly cheap and inexpensive to build, including this larger drone right here. They are made of largely inexpensive items, and also, for that matter, also use cheaper computer systems and telemetry data. Also, the shell is hand-guided, meaning that the advanced computer telemetry data and also guidance systems that would be required in an Excalibur round are not present here on this modified M782 high explosive round. For these reasons, it does appear that the state of Ukraine will be able to provide direct, largely near laser-guided firepower with these sorts of crude drones they're making at the moment. We have not been able to hear if these drones are currently being used against the lost battalion at the Kucheriv Yar pocket, but it does appear that the Ukrainians will be increasing their firepower abilities with their drone forces, and and not only that, cause more significant damage as a result to the Russian armed forces, which are currently fighting on the front lines throughout the entirety of eastern Ukraine. Moving on out from the Ukraine war for a small moment and on into some international news, we've also been able to hear that the United States of America has taken an action against the International Criminal Court, also called by many the ICC in an informal level, as the United States has sanctioned 4 ICC officials from Canada, France, Fiji, and Senegal over efforts to prosecute Americans and Israelis. Secretary Rubio, the Secretary of State of the United States of America, has called the ICC a national security threat. This has come after the ICC has issued arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu along with Vladimir Putin, stating that both are war criminals. This was largely condemned by the United States of America, and we've also been able to hear that the ICC has now started to issue arrest warrants for U.S. officials who have also been present or involved in situations that the ICC considers to be unwarranted. It does appear that the United States of America is considering the jurisdiction of the ICC to contradict or interdict with the jurisdiction of the federal court systems of the United States of America, which constitutionally the United States of America recognizes as the Supreme Court systems, and no other court system can be supreme to the U.S. Supreme Court, which the ICC, largely existing outside the United States jurisdiction, would be considered a even farther, more superior court to the U.S. Supreme Court. For this reason, the United States of America in the past has refused to become a signatory of the ICC, and we can also now see that official actions are being made by the United States of America against the ICC due to it largely operating out of the jurisdiction of any U.S. superior courts like the United States Supreme Court. Outside of that and inside the Middle East, we have also been able to hear that a large explosion has occurred near to the area of the Tabriz airport. Such explosions are not unheard of. Just yesterday, there was an explosion on the far northeastern side of the Islamic Republic of Iran near to the city of Mashhad, which generally once again suggests that Mossad operatives are traveling around the country, setting off explosives and damaging any sort of critical infrastructure that may be found. The explosion yesterday at Mashhad was incredibly close to the Mashhad airport. This explosion today is incredibly close to the airport in Tabriz. It does appear that Mossad operatives may be going around attempting to conduct sabotage attacks, from what we can tell, on critical fuel supplies and fuel infrastructure of these airports, making it even more difficult for the remainder of the Iranian Air Force, which survived the 12-day war, to be able to get into the skies and conduct any air interdiction or air superiority operations over the territory of the Islamic Republic of Iran. These would generally be considered preparatory actions by most officials, as this does appear to be leading up to the continuation of the 12-day war in a second phase. The 12-day war largely ended with both sides, the Israelis and the Iranians, as well as the United States, alluding that this may not be the end. And considering that the Islamic Republic of Iran has made it official their continued investment and research into the development of nuclear weapons, and also due to the fact of their complete refusal to stop any such developments, with the United States and Israel stating that any nuclear proliferation is not only in violation of international treaties, but is a significant threat posed directly from the Islamic Republic of Iran for their continued escalations, and the fact that they are generally considered to be a rogue and dangerous state, supporting and arming terrorist factions throughout the region, including those of Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Yemeni Houthis. We will most likely be seeing that here within the future, most likely before the year is out, the 12-day war will continue between the Israelis and the Iranians, and will most likely result in more significant losses for the Islamic Republic of Iran, but we are not entirely sure how far the Israelis or the United States will take it, as we do understand that there was a lot of pressure from the U.S. government during the last 12-day war and Operation Midnight Hammer to make sure that the actions were more limited in scope and were not longer lasting, like some officials in the Department of Defense would largely like it to have been a multi-week air campaign. Nevertheless, explosions have also broken out within the As-Sawaida government near to the town of As-Sawaida inside of southern Syria. It does appear that this explosion has not necessarily been reported a great deal, and generally at the moment we do not know why this explosion occurred inside of Sawaida. There was a supposed report of Israeli aircraft present and operating within the region, but it is also likely that there may have been some sort of breakout of conflict between the Syrian interim government and the Druze rebel forces within the area. We do understand, however, that the situation is volatile, and while the Syrian interim government has pledged support and safety to the Druze people within the region, we have been able to see the reprisals and unsolicited attacks, including those that could be described as massacres and genocide, have persisted by Syrian interim government forces against the Druze people and the Druze rebels within the area. The State of Israel has provided air support in the past in support of the Druze rebels and against the Syrian interim government, but we have not been able to see any larger actions, at least at the moment, to suggest why this explosion occurred or who conducted it. Still, the situation inside of the Syrian interim government is wildly unstable and continues to be unstable up until the present day. Outside of that, we have also been able to hear, moving back into the Russian Federation for a brief moment, that fuel shortages have now officially reached the mainland of the Russian Federation, although they are relegated at this moment to the farthest east major population center, which is the Primorsky Krai Oblast. The Primorsky Krai Oblast exists of this area of southern Russia, near to the border of Manchuria along the Amur River. This is a somewhat significant area, as the largest city within the far east of Russia, the city of Vladivostok, is based in this area, and this town is largely the only economic machine of the region and also houses the Russian Far East Fleet. Most importantly, however, it does appear that outside the occupied territories, this is the first region of the Russian Federation to now be gripped with crippling fuel shortages, as we are seeing that civilians are queuing up dozens of cars deep for any type of tank of gas that they might be able to get from the gas stations.
Вот такая очередь на мельничной.
We can see here civilians quite literally queuing up
Прямо
for
на
hours.
дороге, нахуй. Нихуя себе. Мне даже бензина не хватит, нахуй, мне стоять.
This civilian saying that his car doesn't even have enough gas to stay within the line. We can also see here another queue, and we'll be muting the audio there, but we can see another queue, once again, multiple dozens cars deep at Russian gas stations within the Primorsky Krai region, as gas is largely completely already run out. We can also see them showing another gas station, and once again, dozens of cars lined up waiting for fuel. The situation is starting to spiral rapidly out of control as far as domestic and military fuel supplies are concerned inside the Russian Federation. Ukrainian drone attacks just within the last week have resulted in around 22% of Russian oil refining capabilities being knocked out. The Russian Federation, generally throughout the entirety of the war, has already started to run a fuel deficit of several 100,000 barrels of usable fuel products a day. Due to the loss of 22% of their refining capabilities, we now understand that that number is close to over 1 million barrels, or more than 1 million barrels per day. The fact that the Russian Federation has already been eating into their strategic fuel reserves throughout the entirety of the war, and also the fact that the strain has never been greater, is starting to result in nationwide or near nationwide or soon to be nationwide fuel outages across the entirety of the Russian Federation. We already were hearing that most of the occupied territories are now completely without any octane of gasoline, diesel largely being the only fuel product left for sale at gas stations, and only for sale if you have a government-issued coupon. We are now seeing that this is the first territory of the Russian Federation within the Russian mainland that is now suffering from crippling fuel shortages, which appears to show us that the Russian Federation is once again trying to consolidate its efforts on keeping Western Russia, with the majority of the population alive and running at the moment as far as fuel resources are concerned, while allowing the extremities to rot and decay due to the complete lack of fuel resources. This will most likely further compound the entirety of the Russian Federation, suffering from significant lacks of fuel, which not only will affect the economy and lead to further and faster economic decay and a economic slump, but will most likely result in the Russian armed forces having to conserve fuel considerably, meaning that offenses may be limited and the amount of time that vehicles can be operational daily will also be regulated to try and cut down on the consumption of fuel on the day-to-day basis. Outside of that, we've also been able to hear of a minor development off of the coast of Japan, as it does appear that the USS San Antonio, or correction, the USS New Orleans, has actually catched fire off the coast of Japan. The crew, with the aid of firefighting tugs, responded to the blaze, which began while the ship was off of Okinawa's White Beach. We are not sure as to why the fire broke out on board the USS New Orleans, but it does appear that the situation has been brought under control, although the fire was significant enough that Japanese fire tugs had to respond from the island of Okinawa to help with fighting the blaze. We will most likely be able to get more additional information and developments on that story if the Department of Defense deems it not to be operational security sensitive, and we'll most likely be able to give an update on that within the next coming days. Nevertheless, that is all of the major news that we have have for the day. I've got to thank you all so much once again for watching, and if y'all have enjoyed, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We'd absolutely love to have y'all here on the Enforcer channel as we make short war videos like these, which I have not made one in an incredibly long time, whenever there is enough news in the middle of the day. Also, we run short war, not only short war videos, but we also run live streams every single day, 6 days a week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, except for Mondays, covering the past 24 hours of news and developments around the world in great detail. And so with that, I also would like to ask you really quickly if you would like to support us on Patreon. For the cost of about a cup of coffee every month, about $5, you can actually support this channel and help us to make these kinds of video projects possible. The link to the Patreon is in the description below, and I already have to give a massive thanks to the hundreds of people who have joined us on Patreon and are supporting this channel monthly to be able to help us to make these kinds of video projects possible and to be able to make the dream work. And so with that, a massive thanks to you all so much once again for watching, and we will see you all in the next one.